Now I want to introduce our speaker today, having set that stage, and tell you a little bit more about the view of the Metropolitan Council. It's a regional, emphasize regional planning agency serving the Twin Cities 7-county metropolitan area. It also provides services in a couple of huge areas. One of my former partners, a guy named Charlie Weaver, told me that you can explain the Metropolitan Council, at least when he was the Met Council's administrator, by saying this: did you get on the bus and did your toilet flush? Then the Met Council is doing its job. The Met Council's much more than just operating Metropolitan Council environmental services that provides for the regional sewer system, and it's much more than the Metropolitan Transit Commission that provides the most significant part of the transit that's provided in the Twin Cities community. It also engages communities and the public in planning for future growth. It provides forecasts for the region's population and household growth. It provides affordable housing opportunities for low and moderate income individuals and families. It provides planning, acquisitions, and funding for the regional system of parks and trails. It provides a framework for decisions and implementation for regional systems, including aviation, transportation, parks and open space, water quality, and water management. So it's got a role in pretty much everything that we do as a Twin Cities metropolitan area. And we are pleased to have the chair of the Metropolitan Council here today to be our speaker. Susan Haigh was appointed chair of the Met Council by Governor Mark Dayton in January 2011. She's the 13th chair of the council since it was created back in 1967. Haigh brings to the job an extensive background in government and community service. Since February 2005, she's served as president and CEO of Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity, which has built more than 820 homes in 50 cities with the help of partner families, volunteers, and donors. She previously served as a Ramsey County Commissioner, Chief Deputy Ramsey County Attorney, Assistant Dakota County Attorney, and as a staff lawyer for the Metropolitan Council. We were chatting and I found out that she worked with the fellow that hired me at Larkin Hoffman, so we kind of go back a ways. But as a county commissioner, Haigh served on the Metro County's Light Rail Joint Powers Board and was an early advocate of the Central Corridor Light Rail Transit Line. And she also was a leader on solid waste management issues. Haigh holds a bachelor's degree in poli-sci from Macalester. What a wonderful degree. It absolutely qualifies you to be a lawyer and nothing else. My political science degree scared my dad to death when I was having trouble getting into law school. That's another story. And she's married to the Honorable Greg Johnson, a Ramsey County District Judge. Please join me in welcoming Met Council Chair Susan Haigh. That's your water.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you very much for welcoming me here today and giving me the chance to speak with you. I really appreciate it very, very much. It is fun to have the legislators here, our county commissioners. I also wanted to recognize one of our Met Council members who's here, Jim Brimmeyer, sitting by Commissioner Dorfman back there. Jim serves with me. There are 17 members of the Met Council. I serve at large as the chair for the whole region. And then there are 16 members who represent specific geographies, and Jim is a council member who represents many of the communities here that participate in Twin West. So thank you very much. My first thanks, though, is to Bruce Newstead and the leadership of this chamber for your support for investment in transit, and particularly for the Southwest LRT line. Thank you very, very much. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Southwest LRT and where we are and why it's important. But before I do that, I think Greg gave a great overview of what it is the council does. And I have heard that phrase that we're involved with busing, flushing, and recreating. But we also really are an organization that at its heart and at its core has for the last 40-plus years been focused on collaboration and creating a regional vision for this wonderful 7 metro county area with 180 cities and the 7 counties. And so sometimes there are tensions between what is important locally and what is important regionally. And it's our job as a regional entity to bring those questions to bear so that we're really making the right investments in public infrastructure that supports the future growth and economic vitality of this region. The whole idea of creating the Metropolitan Council was to more efficiently use public infrastructure to make sure we weren't spending too much money on it, to create an economic environment that created and attracted jobs by the efficient use of infrastructure, and that we really manage our services which extend beyond city lines well, and that they serve our citizens well. So it's a pretty simple concept. It's actually very hard to execute and do because the issues are complicated on a day-to-day basis. You may not know that we do treat 90% of the wastewater in this metropolitan area. We have absolutely the most efficient wastewater treatment system in the country. There are most metropolitan areas that have 80 different units of government involved with wastewater treatment. We are fortunate here that leaders back in the 60s said, well, that is not a good way to go because it is expensive to do it that way. So let's have a regional system that really serves all of our communities. In addition to that, of course, people know us as the operator of the largest transit system in the state of Minnesota and in the region. If you ride a bus, if you ride commuter rail, if you ride light rail, if you ride express buses, you are involved in services provided by Metro Transit. We actually serve 81 million riders in our transit system. We're very proud of how effective it is. We're in the top 5 in the country for cost effectiveness for our transit system, and we keep getting better at it all the day. And if you haven't ridden the bus lately, it's a different experience than it was 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because technology is really changing how quickly you can get on and off the bus and how fast our buses can take you to work and to school. In addition to our transit work, and we also coordinate the transportation planning for the whole region, which is both roads and transit. We work with the smaller local transit providers, and together we provide rides to 91 million people, 91 million riders in the region on an annual basis. So we really touch the lives of a lot of people. And very vital because fundamentally transit is about getting people to work and to school. 80% of the people who get on a bus or get on a train or an express bus are going to work and they're going to school. And it's so connected to economic vitality and growth. The faster people can get to work, the better it is for the employers and the businesses, and the better it is for people because they have more time to spend with their families, less time to spend in the commute. In addition to our role in transit and transportation planning, we are also really involved in the housing field. We operate the Metro HRA, a Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and we serve 6,000 people who need assistance finding housing because they are very low income. So we are one of the largest HRAs in the metropolitan area. And in addition to that, we also provide grants to local communities so that they can create more affordable housing within their own cities, and so they can create more economic development opportunities. The work that we do, though, that is sometimes the hardest to explain, but probably the most important in the long run, is the idea that we create a strategic plan for the region. I'm sure in each of your businesses or your organizations, you have a strategic plan. You're trying to decide what is it that my customers need in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, and how are we going to get where we want to go? And that's what we do at the Met Council. We develop what's called the Regional Development Framework, which is essentially a plan to guide local governments, local elected officials in their planning. So we gather information for the region to explain where transportation and investments are going to be, where people are going to live, how housing is going to change and grow and be different, and what the population forecasts are. So we do quite a bit of research and provide that information to all of our partners in local government. I am a strong believer in local government. I started my career as a lawyer for the Met Council. Yes, I was a political science major, but I was because I liked local government. And I think local government is a fabulous place because it really isn't very partisan in local government. It's really about people who know their communities well and are trying to think about how they can make it a better community to live in for the people they represent. And I love that about local government. It's always sort of where the rubber meets the road and how you really get real things done. And so I bring that vision to my work at the Metro Council. I have a deep respect for city council members, for county commissioners, for local mayors, because I know how hard that work is. It's not glamorous, they don't get paid much, and they have to go to a lot of meetings with a lot of people to really listen and be able to see what citizens need. And that's important, and that's what the Met Council members do. They are out working with city council members, county commissioners, and citizens in their districts to really understand the needs within this wonderful metropolitan region. Well, one of the things I want to talk about are my three areas of focus as the chair of the council. I'm very grateful. I've been in this role for 1 year. It's a fast-moving, dynamic organization. It's been quite a challenging past year. The government shutdown, as you know, is a tough issue for all of the legislators here. Certainly was for us at the Met Council because we took a really big cut to our transit system. When the state budget settlement ended up, we received 40% fewer funds from the state general fund to run the Metro transit system. And so we've had to do a lot of rejiggering and adjusting to be able to make the buses continue to run with significantly less resources. So we are challenged, as the state legislators are, with the issues involving our state budget. But what I really think is important for us as a regional organization, for our legislators, for our local leaders is, we are working today to build the community that our children and our grandchildren are going to live in. That's our job when we're involved with public infrastructure. So I think it's absolutely essential that we really step up and invest in a 21st century transit and transportation system. So 30 years from now, 40 years, 50 years from now, this region will be a top region where employers will want to locate, where workers will want to work, and where it will be easy to get around. And that will make us a strong and vital region. So building a 21st century transit system is certainly a priority for me. A second priority is how, when we're making these large public infrastructure investments, how can we leverage that investment to get more economic development and more job growth? And how can we work closely with businesses and local communities to make sure that happens? So that's a second key priority. And then third, I think a key priority for me will be addressing the diverse housing needs of this region. Greg mentioned to you that I have worked to lead Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity for the last 7 years. It's been a great privilege to do that work. I continue to do that work. I serve as a Met Council chair in a part-time capacity. And I know firsthand how important it is that people have stable homes to live in. Families who live in safe and healthy homes have healthy families. Their kids succeed at school, and they help us to build strong neighborhoods and successful communities. So really creating a housing policy plan that helps local communities provide more opportunity and choice for a range of people from a variety of incomes, I think was another strategic priority for me at the Met Council. But let's talk about Southwest LRT, because that is a project that I've been spending a lot of time working on, and as have members of this chamber, and I really appreciate that. And let me tell you where we are with it right now, and we're at a really exciting point. First of all, we're ready to move into preliminary engineering on the Southwest LRT corridor, and if you don't know where it goes exactly, it's a 15-mile-long corridor with 17 station stops. It connects up in downtown Minneapolis at Target Field, and it goes out to Eden Prairie, Minnetonka, goes through Hopkins, St. Louis Park, into Minneapolis, and also serves Edina. It's a $1.2 billion investment. Which is just about $200 million over the investment we're making right now in Central Corridor LRT between downtown St. Paul and downtown Minneapolis. The Federal Transit Administration, which is the 50% federal funding partner for Southwest LRT and for LRT in general in the country, we compete to get that money. It's not like highway money where you get an allocation based on your population and your geography. You only get federal partnership if your project moves riders, is cost effective, and meets goals of the Federal Transit Administration. So I'm very proud to say that this Southwest LRT project has met this threshold and is in preliminary engineering. We competed with over 100 projects around the country, and there are only 12 in preliminary engineering. This is the only project in preliminary engineering in the upper Midwest. So it really is a big deal, and it's sort of like the federal partner who's going to pay for half of this project to say, wow, this is a viable project, it needs to get done. So it's a pretty important threshold for us. So what we have before us right now is how to fund the 10% share of the project. Federal government goes 50%. Counties, through the CTIB sales tax, pays 30%. Hennepin County will pay another 10%. And we're asking the state legislature to kick in 10% of that total share. So this year at the legislature, Governor Dayton has in his bonding bill a request for $25 million for Southwest LRT. So thank you to Twin West Chamber for supporting us in that request. It's absolutely critical that we get that resource to advance this project into preliminary engineering. If we move forward on the timetable we are now, trains will run on the Southwest Corridor in 2018. We know how to do this work. We've learned so much during the development of Central Corridor Light Rail on Hiawatha. We have good marks from the Federal Transit Administration for our ability to plan, design, and construct this project, and so it's very exciting to be in this stage. What's most important about this project, though, is not just building the LRT line, it's what it's going to do for these communities. Along this corridor, there are 200,000 jobs today. Probably a little more than that, 220, I think it is. So this is a key investment for employers there. What we know is we are projecting there's going to be an additional 60,000 job growth in this corridor. And there's a significant investment being made by major businesses and employers around the development around these stops. Because just like rivers used to, railroads used to, LRT is going to be the way in which economic growth is focused and targeted in an urban environment like ours in the 7 Metro County area. So Southwest LRT is going to help mobility in the Southwest Corridor. It's going to help attract new jobs, and it's going to help people get to and from work. And when Southwest LRT opens in 2018, you'll be able to take a one-seat ride all the way from Eden Prairie out to the down to the state capitol. It's going to be the green line eventually. We're going to stop calling it Southwest LRT, and you're going to be able to go from the Union Depot in St. Paul through the Central Corridor, through the University of Minnesota, out to Eden Prairie. It's going to be a very, very efficient system. So we're so excited about that. So many thanks for your support and your leadership for us. I really appreciate that. Another major project we're working on this session is what happens where this connects up at the interchange at Target Field. I don't know, has anyone ever gotten on the train or the bus at Target Field north of the station? Anyone here ever done that? Raise your hands if you have. You'll know that that place is mobbed with riders. And that's really a good thing. And what it speaks to is that really the way Target Field was built was to encourage people to take transit there and to fit into that urban environment. And it's done it really well. So when Central Corridor opens up in just 2 years, in 2014, we will have twice the number of riders on the LRT train coming into Target Field than we do today. So we want to get that interchange and that plaza rebuilt so that we'll get ready for Southwest Corridor, so that we'll be ready for Central Corridor. And I hear that the Twins are trying to get the All-Star game here in 2014, and we really want to have that done if we get to host the All-Star game, which would be very, very exciting. So that interchange project is a very exciting and vital project. Hennepin County has received some funding from the federal government for that. We're partnering with them at the Met Council, and so you might hear more about that. And it's going to be a really neat investment, which will ultimately help moving the Southwest Corridor project to be a very efficient and effective project. Another new thing we're working on with transit at Met Council is taking the same concept that we have with our express buses, but moving them onto the bus arteries, and we're going to call it rapid bus. So on major bus arteries like Snelling Avenue in St. Paul or Central Avenue in Minneapolis or American Boulevard in Bloomington, we're going to try to create a bus service that kind of acts like an express bus. Doesn't stop so often. It's easier to get on and off, faster getting on and off, just like LRT is, and will move more riders. It's a cost-effective approach because we can't build LRT everywhere. And it will supplement and build into the transit system we're building with LRT. So we're very excited about that. The other topic I want to hit on before I end up here, and I want to leave a little time for some questions, is really about, you know, what are we going to see and what are we thinking about where the region is going in the next 30 to 40 years. So when we do our strategic plan or the regional development guide, we actually are charged in state law by doing that all the way out to 2040, which is a long time. So we've really looked at growth and development patterns by decades for many years. And what we know now is we're seeing some of the preliminary numbers coming in, that we are not going to have as rapid growth in this metropolitan area as we did in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s. We had fairly rapid growth in the beginning of the last decade, and then of course with the recession, growth really slowed very, very much for the last part of the last decade. So we're really trying to think about what are the development patterns going to be, where is growth going, and how can we do those projections. So later this spring, we'll be developing some information, and we'll be asking for input from people about that, from businesses, from local communities, to make sure that we're really thinking this through and getting this right. Because this is the framework that will guide all of us as local communities as we're thinking about our public infrastructure investment. One of the things we do know is that we're going to change dramatically. This room will look so different 30 years from now than it does today. In 2030, this region will be 45% people of color. We are experiencing rapid changes in the race and ethnicity of the people who live in this region. And so we really need to pay attention to that and make sure that we are lifting up the opportunities for all people of all colors. And we want to make sure our systems do that job well as well. The other thing that we know is that housing might be different in the future than it is today. We think household size is not going to be as big as it was in the last decade. And that has a lot to do with the aging of the baby boomers and their children growing up and them moving into either one or two person households. So we think housing demand will be different probably than it was 10 years ago. So a lot of the planning work that we're doing around the regional development framework is trying to ask those questions and trying to get the best answers we can so that we can all make good decisions with the local resources and the regional resources we have. The other thing we know about our housing stock is that probably 75% of the housing stock we're going to need by 2030 is already here, but it needs some investment. It needs preservation, it needs remodeling, it needs reinvestment to meet needs and to be decent quality housing stock. So the idea of preserving housing, reinvesting in housing, I think will probably be a key housing strategy. with that, we have some other exciting things we're working on, but I see my time is running out, and I want to make sure that I leave some time for questions if people have questions. I want to thank you for your partnership as a business community, for your leadership and your work, and all of the local officials here and the legislators. Collaboration is what we try to do at the Met Council. We try to really listen to the unique needs from one part of the region to the next, from one local community to the next, but have a regional vision. You know, you've probably heard from Michael Langley from Greater MSP. I don't know if he's come to this chamber or not yet, but I love this work that the business community has done together, where they've come together to really market this region as a region. And we play a role in that because we help to coordinate the smart investment in our public infrastructure resources. And we hope that's a selling point for this region, that that's something that's attractive, that will make people want to come here and live here. So thank you for your support and your willingness to listen to me today, and I really look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you very much.
We do have time for a couple of questions if folks have something that they wanted to bring up. I know I do. Oh, here we go. Mike.
I'll just talk real loud. I think everyone can hear me. Twin West, yes, supports the Southwest LRT, and obviously you do too for the similar reasons. But we saw an editorial in the paper the other day that pretty much from a Republican elected official painted a very negative picture and said it was a loser. Comment on that, please.
Well, you know, I think that, you know, clearly there are divided views on whether this is a smart investment or not a smart investment. I think it is a smart investment. I think when the state of Minnesota puts in 10% and gets back 90%, there's not a better investment in the state bonding bill than that. And not only does it create jobs to build it, but there's not another investment in that bonding bill that is actually going to link people to work, like Southwest LRT. There's going to be 60,000 jobs that we hope are going to grow in this quarter, and we think that if we make this investment, that will incent the growth of those jobs. So I think the voice of the Twin West Chamber and business leaders here to talk with their legislators about, maybe you share that view, maybe you don't, I don't know. I think it makes sense, and I hope you have those conversations with your legislators.
We hear from local governments from time to time that the Met Council isn't really in touch with what's going on at my backyard when it's looking at comprehensive planning. State law requires the Met Council to approve local government comprehensive plan changes, and so there's some real arguments there. Can you tell us a little bit about what you think of from a metropolitan perspective when you look at local government comprehensive planning?
Well, I think the issue of our local comprehensive plan review is something that really is the genius behind the development of the Met Council, because it's really trying to coordinate the investment in systems amongst communities that cut across cities. A city cannot plan on its own without knowing what its neighbor is doing, and that's the purpose of our local comprehensive plan review. Our Met Council members are out meeting with local governments. I certainly meet with local government officials. And of course, if you're a local government official, you really know your local community really, really well. So it's important for us at the council to listen and to really understand those local issues as we're addressing these comp plan reviews. Good. Yeah. Thank you very much.
I want to thank Chair Haigh for giving us some great insights into what's going on at the Metropolitan Council. It's always a topic that generates some good discussion. I do want to now thank all of our legislative breakfast sponsors, especially Grand Casino Mille Lacs Hinckley, for being a series sponsor this year, and our sustaining sponsors, Comcast and Home Service Plus, and our session sponsors, Allina Hospitals and Clinics, Circadian, Politics in Minnesota and Capital Report, Pawn America, Voyager Bank, and Swank Audiovisual. Before I conclude the program, I do want to make a couple of announcements. Gala tickets are still available. I am standing on the stage where our factor is going to be playing, so for those of you who love the dancing and the excitement of the gala, the band is back, so make sure that you get your gala tickets. And see you on March 16th at the next legislative breakfast featuring Congressman Eric Paulson. Thank you for coming out this morning.